Today, I've got 10 reasons why entrepreneurship sucks and how to fix them. And these are in no particular order, so let's just jump into it. And number one is that it's all on you. Okay, like this is something that a lot of guys feel, especially if they've got a family. It feels like, your family is like getting food on the table, living a good life. It's all on you. Okay, you got employees. They got people looking to you to get paid. They're looking for opportunities to grow and to thrive. Again, it's all on you. Okay, then you got clients and customers. You got people who are looking for you to solve their problems. They are giving you money and they are expecting a lot in return. And all this stuff, it all comes down on you and your performance, right? And this can be an insane amount of pressure while you're trying to juggle all of these different balls. And the best way that I've found to fix this sort of situation is to approach entrepreneurship almost as a spiritual practice. That's the way that I see it, is that like you want to, instead of seeing you as it all on your shoulders, you see it as more, it's on God's shoulders and I'm just kind of like his first mate, right? Like he's the master, I'm the steward. And when you start looking at things from this perspective, it unlocks a really deep spiritual experience in this path of entrepreneurial family life. Okay, because it lets you become the conduit of God's blessings so that you can create this massive ripple effect out into the world. And when you start living from this perspective, takes a lot of weight off your shoulders and things start to flow much more smoothly. On to reason number 2, entrepreneurship sucks. And that is that working hard guarantees you literally nothing. Okay, like you can be busting your ass working 80, 90 hours a week and you still might go bankrupt. Okay, you still might fail. Like a huge number of businesses fail. You still might just be scraping by. And this is kind of a hard thing to recognize, especially if you've been stuck in the grind for a while. But the upside to this is that while working hard doesn't guarantee you anything, working smart opens up literally the entire world. Because when you are the guy in charge, when you are the one who gets to make all the decisions, then you can tap into leverage. You can be smart. You can make good moves. And there is unlimited earning potential, right? Unlike if you work for someone else where your salary is probably going to get capped at a certain point. When you work for yourself, like there is no cap, there is no limit. All you got to do is just figure it out. And so if you are able to do that, if you're able to embrace that as an opportunity, well then, I think that really balances out this lack of guarantees, right? Like you got to have a risk tolerance, but if you can embrace that risk tolerance and see it more as like, well, I can do whatever the heck I want. I can make this thing absolutely blow up. That's the attitude that you want to have. Next reason that entrepreneurship sucks is that you never really get to take time off. And, I've heard people talk about this who've said, yeah, I could never work for myself because I want to be able to clock out at the end of the day and know that these problems, they're no longer my problems. They're the business's problems, right? Like I'm done. I put my time in and, I got to just put it all away. For a lot of guys who own businesses, they feel like they can never do that. Right? Like even if technically they're not working, their head's still kind of spinning. They're still kind of in there, right? They never feel like they can actually take the pressure off of them. But the flip side to this, the part you want to really embrace is that, well, you can still do the same thing. You can still turn your head off. And what's more is that you can literally take as much time as you want off, right? If you get your business in a good place, you should be able to take as much vacation as you want. Ideally, it would be something where, if you want to build something really scaled, for example, you should be only putting in a few hours a week, right? Because then you got managers and other people to handle things. And doing this is like one part practical, setting up all the systems and that sort of thing, which is just really kind of like a logical game of putting the puzzle pieces together. I think even deeper, it's a psychological game where you understand how much you want to be working, how much your business needs you to be working, and finding this intersection point where it's like, I've done my work for the day. I've shut things down and I'm not going to touch it until I get back to it tomorrow, barring, some kind of emergency or whatever. I'm not going to touch it till tomorrow. And I feel good about that. And this is one of these things that's going to be different for each guy for how he does this. But this is something you absolutely can do as long as you learn how to get to know yourself and figure out what you need to have in place psychologically for you to rest. And this will actually make you perform better because taking that time off lets you recharge, and then you can hit it again harder the next day. Reason number 4 why entrepreneurship sucks is that there is no way to avoid screwing up a lot. Okay. Like if entrepreneurship is something that you could just kind of reduce down into like a simple formula, there'd be a lot more people who would do it because, people are risk averse, right? And if there was a very super clear cut path to doing everything and that information was readily available, well then, yeah, of course people are going to run their own businesses. People would love to be their own bosses. They'd love to be able to have uncapped earning potential. But the reason why people aren't embracing this is because you're going to screw up. You're going to fail. You're going to have periods where you do something wrong, something breaks, something doesn't work out. You put a bunch of effort into it, etc. And the reason for this is because there's so many unknown unknowns when you're building a business. Even if someone had it figured out at one point and they published a course about here's exactly how you make money doing this kind of business, that will probably only work for a little period. Business is a PvP kind of game, all right? The landscape is constantly shifting with new technology, new strategies, people gobbling up a market share, a market disappearing, all of these kinds of things. And so, you can't have that sort of clarity. But what you can have is that you can have an iterative experimental mindset where you embrace, yes, some things are going to work and some things are not. I'm going to run these experiments. I'm going to try stuff out and ideally try and keep your testing windows sort of small, iterate and pivot when necessary. If you can do that right, well, then it becomes like more of an adventure, right? It becomes this thing where you are playing a game. And it's just going to be trial and error. In fact, like the way that I view it is a lot of times when you don't know exactly the right path, you're just picking how do I want to screw up on purpose first to gather information, right? You can learn how to screw up productively, basically by being like, here's my best bet. I'm going to take a swing at this and then I'm going to see what happens because whatever happens, I'm going to learn something and that's going to inform my next test. And so as long as you shift into that mindset, you're going to be able to move much more swiftly and confidently. So this brings us to point number 5, and that is everything takes longer and is harder than you think it will be. And this is one of those things that I just kind of refused to accept when I first started working for myself back in 2013. I always thought I had a handle on what my timelines should be. But when you're dealing with anything new, right? Any new audience, any new product, any new marketing funnel, whatever, new technology that you're trying to employ, okay? All of these things, they have a hidden learning curve. There's going to be something that breaks. There's going to be something that doesn't work that you didn't see initially. After a while, after years of doing this, of thinking like, oh, I'll be able to get this done in a week and having it take like 3 months or something like that, eventually you learn how to spot the big pockets of potential chaos. And you learn how to set up your plans so that they are smaller and more intelligent kind of little sprints of effort where you're more controlled in the variables. It's like, all right, I'm going to limit the amount of chaos. We can't eliminate it, right? Because there's always going to be stuff that could go wrong and, things that we don't know. But you can learn how to compress it down into things where it's like, I think that like there's a little blank spot here, but, this other stuff I'm pretty familiar with. And I'm going to go with this sized goal rather than one like this with like 8 different massive unknowns inside of it. And so eventually you can learn how to do this. And it's about embracing like this idea of constraints, learning how to lean into constraints and realize that these constraints are actually your friends. By making things smaller, setting limits to certain stuff, it'll let you actually deal with this chaos in a much more controlled manner. Number 6 reason why entrepreneurship sucks is that you are constantly torn between work and family, right? This is a rough one. I think that this one like probably tears up a lot of the family guys out there who run their own businesses because when they're at work and especially if they're working long hours, they feel like, oh, I'm not spending enough time with my family. My kids are growing up. Oh my gosh, she was just a little girl. Now she's, putting on a dress and, being a teenager and stuff like that. These sort of things, they tear at your heart, right? But then you try and take time to be with your family and all you're thinking about is like, shoot, the business isn't where I want it to be yet. I got to be doing more work, all this other kind of stuff. And you're not really even present with them. You're just kind of irritable or distant and you're not the fun self that, they really deserve. What this is, like the key to all of this is leverage. All right. This is how you fix it, right? You got to get leverage in your business, meaning you have to learn how to do more with less, which is, an adventure in its own right, which we'll talk about more in other videos. But if you can do that, well, you can bring your working hours down, bring your income up. Pretty simple to say, not so easy to do, but it's absolutely doable. Every business that's scaled has done that. You can do it too. All right. But also applying this leverage to your family life as well, making sure that when you are connecting with your family, you're doing it in the high quality ways, right? And maybe it's not a huge amount if you're in a major crunch time, but you're doing it in the ways that really make an impact both for you and for them. And so if you embrace this idea of leverage, you're not going to feel so torn between work and family. And the more that you maximize your leverage, the easier all this is going to become. On to number 7. And this one is like, it's just raw money. All right. It's like the reason why working for yourself sucks is that paying for all your own expenses is kind of rough, right? It's nice when you work for a business and they like buy you a new laptop, or, they're buying you that super high end, like, professional grade software or whatever the tools are, right? It's also really nice when they pay your health insurance if you live in the United States. Like that's not cheap. But again, when you feel in that crunch of working for yourself and feeling like, I got to pay for everything, is that you are in charge of the ROI, right? Like one of the things that I think is really frustrating for employees at different businesses is seeing their, companies invest insane amounts of money in stuff that's just not actually helpful. I remember like my brother, he was working at a place and they installed this massive new like customer service optimization thing with all these iPads and everything. And it was just a garbage system that made everything worse and made them lose an insane amount of money, right? And when you work for yourself, it's like you're in there and you can make sure, I'm going to buy this thing because I'm going to get something really valuable out of it. Every single thing that you buy, you can look at that as an opportunity to make more money, and you are in control. And since you're in the business, you know how it works, you can make sure that those investments are good. And so it's just like, you can feel great about spending money. And the fact that if you do it right, you've got unlimited earning potential. There you go. It's definitely better. Now on to number 8 of reasons why entrepreneurship sucks is that there are no surefire success checklists. Okay. I was kind of saying this before, but it's worth reiterating this one, despite what any sort of business guru will tell you. There's no checklist where it's like, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and you'll have a business that is awesome. Okay. Now, technically, to be totally fair, there's probably some checklists out there that if you follow every little thing on the checklist, you will make money. But there's no guarantee that that will actually give you something that you want. Because often what I found is when people follow these super formulaic sort of things is that they might even get a business going, but they don't like it. It doesn't click with them. All right. And when we're talking about success, we can't just look at it in the narrow, aspect of just financial success. It's like, do you hate your job? Okay, well then that's not, and even if you're making money, that's not success, at least not in my book. And then, just the reality is there's going to be so few of those things even available, right? Even ones that like you follow this, you'll get the money. Okay. That's just so insanely rare. And even if it is working at one point, it's not going to be working in the future because everyone else is going to jump on that checklist, and then it's going to be oversaturated and things are going to break down. So what's the answer to this? Is to realize that why there isn't like, step-by-step checklists necessarily, there are formulas, all right? There are certain things in business that will guarantee certain kinds of results if you apply the principles. But the application of these principles, it's always about like your unique situation, all right? And that is where the creativity comes in. That's where you get to display your unique genius as an entrepreneur, or at least your own unique intuition and understanding of the world, all right? If we don't want to be, if we feel uncomfortable calling ourselves geniuses, right? And that's the fun game, right? You understand there's certain rules we got to follow. And if we can plug these formulas in and then creatively apply our own mind and effort to it, well, then we get to have something awesome happen. And this is that adventure place, right? It's where you study these foundational things. There's lots of great people who teach these foundational principles, but then you embrace them, you take them home, and then it's like, I got a new building block. How can I fit that into this mosaic of what I'm trying to create in my life? And if you go at it with the right attitude, then it can be really, really wonderful. And so on to number 9, being your own boss is a nightmare, and you cannot fire or punish yourself, right? Well, I guess you can punish yourself, but that's gonna be pretty ineffective. But yeah, like what if the bottleneck in your business is you, right? How do you handle that? Well, if you got an employee, well, you got to discipline them. You got to coach them. You got to, maybe fire them, hire someone else. Maybe you got to inspire them. You got to understand their problems. But when it's yourself, it starts getting a lot trickier. And a lot of guys, they really struggle with this. They struggle to be in charge of themselves when they're struggling, right? If they're having a hard time, how do they, mentor themselves? And this is the shift to this is you don't want to look at it as being your own boss, because that implies like this top-down structure. And for a lot of guys, what that means is that they view their intellect as the boss and then their emotional self as the employee, the part that's supposed to just sacrifice and labor away, okay? And typically what ends up happening then is that you emotionally just start getting burnt out, overwhelmed, feeling resistance, etc. And your intellect's just like, shut up, keep going, don't suck. What you got to do is you got to shift that whole dynamic, because the reality is that our emotions, the employee or whatever, that's actually the engine. That's the most important part of the machine, because if your emotions are in alignment, then work and execution, that's all easy, right? You can sustain that if you want to be doing what you're doing, you like doing what you're doing. Instead, it's got to be viewed as, instead of a, boss-employee relationship between your head and your heart, you want it to be more of a partnership. Your head and your heart working together in full alignment. Like every business, even if it's a solopreneurship, is a partnership. It's a partnership between head and heart. And this intersection between what is rationally true and accurate and useful, this intersection between that and what emotionally feels good and what you truly want, this is critical. But when you learn that finding where these two parts intersect, your head and your heart, that is the path, then you realize you always have an internal compass for how to get ahead. Okay. And this is the key to making decisions, which is, the most important part of being a business owner is your decision making. It's like, oh, I just got to find where these parts line up. And when they go ding, 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 head and heart in alignment, like that's resonance. That's the key to making smooth and effective progress. And so on to reason number 10, why entrepreneurship sucks. It's that, it can feel very lonely. You can feel like you're by yourself. And we want to help you with that, because entrepreneurship, it really doesn't suck. It's actually fantastic. It just sucks when you're doing it alone from a place of stress without a system that actually works for your life. And so at Frontline Man, we coach entrepreneurial family men to install their personal operating system that will allow them to scale their business, simplify their systems, and reclaim their time without burning out or dropping the ball at home. So if you're done white knuckling your way through this self-employment journey, then I want you to click the link below to book a free call with us, and let's map out a path that actually works for you. No pressure, just clarity. Click the link below, and we look forward to talking to you.